I'll just pick up my case. So 103.45 specifically for right of private defense, of course 96 to 99 are applicable to both. In 97, of course, this would be secondary, right? So that's how you come to 103. Now in 103, one offense from 97 part 2 robberies, as it is picked up, equality would be impliedly there. Then there are forms of trespass, criminal trespass, and mischief and theft, the other three offences that are included here, where you have the right available to the fullest extent. But all other forms of criminal trespass, mischief by fire, mischief and theft, which are not covered in secondly, thirdly, and fourthly, but are there in chapter in the IPC because it has to amount an offence first. Attempts included. For those offences, any harm less than death, that's 104. ठीक है, यहाँ तक के लिए आप वही same pattern है जो हमने ऊपर 101 में किया. These offences, this what I told you. 97 से चलो, chapter 16 पूरा right of private defense is available. Minus section 100 because here it's available to the fullest extent. That's why I'm saying minus section 100. Available to the fullest extent. Remaining any harm less than death. That's what happens. So the same pattern you find here. You start with 97 secondly, 4 offences, out of which one is as it is covered, impliedly would include equality, remaining 3. This kind of theft, mischief, or criminal trespass to the fullest extent. Everything remaining in theft, criminal trespass, mischief, after removing these, any harm less than death. Right? So that's what 904 says. If the offence, the committing of which or the attempting to commit which occasions the right of private defence, be theft, mischief, criminal trespass, because robbery is already covered. So not of any of the descriptions enumerated in the last preceding section, meaning 103, that right does not extend to the voluntary causing of death, but does extend, subject to the restrictions mentioned in section 99, to the voluntary causing to the wrongdoer of any harm other than death. ये मैं आपको इसलिए समझा रही हूँ that you understand and then try to remember if required. Copy भी करना है आपको, अगर वो भी होता है एग्जाम के हिसाब से मैं बोल रही हूँ. Even then, if you should understand the scheme, right, so that you know that this is the pattern and this is where you have to go for writing or even understanding. So don't try to, even for sections, don't try to mug them up without understanding. You need to understand them. Of course, examination is a necessary evil, so if you have to write without an OB, then you have to memorize these also. But even otherwise, spend enough time on your sections trying to understand them, evolving some scheme of your own, simplifying them so that it's there in your mind. Even if you don't have access to an IPC, you know broadly what private defense is. Right? So that's the intent. So now, what was the third section in private defense of body? The pattern that I was mentioning, 100, 101, 102. The right of private defense of the body commences. When does it commence? When does it? How long does it continue? Commences with the danger, continues as long as the danger is there. It's over with the danger. Right? So that's when the danger ends, it's coterminous with the danger, like we said. The same pattern now. Here, it's a little different. So it says when does the right commence and how long it continues. For property offences, it's slightly different. It of course commences at the same time. शुरू वैसे ही होता है when reasonable apprehension to danger to property arises, and that may arise even from threat to commit an offence, but there has to be reasonable imminent danger, and it may of course may arise from an attempt to commit that offence also. वो तो same है. But how long it continues, that depends on the nature of the property. It says the right of private defense of property commences when a reasonable apprehension of danger to the property commences. शुरू हो गया. चलेगा कब तक? How long this right is available? That depends on the offence. Right, and we have 4 offences here. 1 is first is theft. 2 is mischief. 3 is criminal trespass. 4 is mischief. 5 is theft. 6 is criminal trespass. 7 is mischief. 8 is criminal trespass. 9 is criminal trespass. 10 is criminal trespass. 11 is criminal trespass. 12 is criminal trespass. 13 is criminal trespass. 14 is criminal trespass. 15 is criminal trespass. 16 is criminal trespass. 17 is criminal trespass. 18 is criminal trespass. 19 is criminal trespass. 20 is criminal trespass. 21 is criminal trespass. 22 is criminal trespass. 23 is criminal trespass. 24 is criminal trespass. 25 is criminal trespass. 26 is criminal trespass. 27 is criminal trespass. 28 is criminal trespass. 29 is criminal trespass. 30 is criminal trespass. 31 is criminal trespass. 32 is criminal trespass. 33 is criminal trespass. 34 is cri So right of private defense of property against theft continues till the offender has effected his retreat with the property. One. Or either the assistance of public authorities is obtained or the property has been recovered, separated by a thief enters your property, enters your property, a person enters your property with the intent to commit theft. I told you intent, mens rea requirement in terms of 441. This is an offense, intent to commit an offense. Enters your property with that intent. अभी उसने enter ही किया है with उस intention के साथ. That is criminal trespass. And the right of private defense of property मैं mix करके आपको बता रही हूँ example में, इसलिए I'm just picking up this one first. The right of private defense of property against criminal trespass continues as long as the offender continues in the commission of the criminal trespass. अभी से feel लो because मेरे example में trespass आ रहा है ना, तो I'm just picking that up with theft. जब तक trespass है आपका right of private defense है against trespass. So if somebody enters your property with intent to insult, intimidate, annoy, or commit an offense, that's criminal trespass. Mens rea, I've told you multiple times, mens rea requirement is there for criminal trespass. Civil में आप गलती से भी घुस गए तो civil trespass हो जाए. Now, so this thief enters your property with intent to steal. Criminal trespass हो गया, right of private defense हो गया. You are asleep, the whole family is asleep, and the thief starts collecting whatever he wants to steal. Hearing some noise, you wake up, and the thief, of course, just picks up whatever he's gathered so far and rushes out of your property. The moment he's out of your property, your right of private defense against criminal trespass is over. But you can still chase the thief because your right of private defense of theft against theft is still continuing. How long will it continue? इसमें theft में थोड़ा सा है तो थोड़ा ध्यान से समझो. How long will it continue? The section says against theft it will continue till the offender has effected his retreat with the property. You are chasing him, but he's managed to escape with the property. अब ये नहीं थोड़ा कि वो किसी गाड़ी के पीछे छुप के आप पीछा कर रहे हो तो आप you're still chasing him. तब नहीं, he's managed to escape. वो वहां से भाग गया. You were chasing and now you've lost him. He's managed to effect his retreat means this. That he's managed to escape. I'll come back to this point. What are the other things that emerge from this? Let's first understand the three limbs. Or either assistance of public authorities is obtained. You've lost him. You call up the police. अब तो mobile phones भी हैं. घर भी जाने की जरूरत नहीं वापस. You call them and say this is what has happened and the thief has run out. You obtain the assistance of public authorities. Your right to private defense is over. But like I said, if you see the thief again, वो जो normal मैंने आपको CRPC में बताया था, powers of arrest of a public of an ordinary person, citizen. But then you have to hand over to the police. तो उस तरह से पकड़ने की तो power तो किसी को भी है, वो आपको भी होगी. But private defense against theft is over. Or let's say when you woke up, you realize there has been a theft in your house, and you call up the police. You've obtained the assistance of public authorities. Your right of private defense is over because also because you've obtained the assistance of public authorities, but also because the property, he's managed to effect his retreat. लेकिन वो तो भाग चुका, आपको पता ही नहीं था, आप सो रहे थे. Although one of them would suffice. Or the property has been recovered. That's the third situation. You are chasing this thief. The first example that I gave. You're chasing this thief. At some point, you're able to. Now, the moment he's off your property, out of your property, the right of private defense against trespass is over. his trespass is over, है ना? लेकिन you're still chasing him, and your right continues according to 105 against theft. Private defense against theft continues. You're able to catch him, and you snatch your property back. आपने छीन लिया उसके हाथ से जो भी वो बैग में लेके भाग रहा था. The property has been recovered. Your right of private defense of property against theft is also over. Like I said, any private citizen वो जो offender को पकड़ने की पावर जो है जो भी CRPC में लिमिट्स है, लास्ट टाइम मैंने आपको बताई थी, वो तो ठीक है, आप पुलिस को तो पकड़ के उसको दे सकते, but your right of private defense against property is over. And now, if you beat up the thief, the position will change. You will be the aggressor legally, and the thief will have a right of private defense of body, his own body. Because I told you, Kishan's case will discuss this again. If you've started, मेरा presumption रहेगा आप पढ़ के आओगे सारे, क्योंकि मुझे ये Thursday को खत्म करना ही है, and I hope you will have it would be possible to extend it tomorrow. ठीक है, वो मैं बहुत जल्दी ऐसा करने को तो प्राइवेट डिफेंस 2 लेक्चर्स में भी खत्म हो सकता है, बट आई डोंट वांट टू रश दैट मींस आई डोंट वांट टू रश अब यहाँ पे आपको समझने की जरूरत है. Cases, facts that can be faster, we can speed that up a little, provided you come after reading. नहीं तो उसमें फिर मुझे भी लगता है समझ नहीं आएगा बताए बिना. ठीक है, तो केसेस पढ़ लेना, कल एक्सटेंड कर पाए तो, बिकॉज आपका थोड़ा चेंज हो जाता है ना कभी कभी. So then we'll complete this tomorrow. So this right will continue. These are the 3 aspects. So once you Kishan versus state, this is what I'm saying. Once an aggressor need not always be an aggressor. That may change. So here you've turned into an aggressor now, and he has a right of private defense of property because what you are doing is punitive. And our IPC says whoever for grievous hurt, homicide, whoever. So you do not have the right to beat up a person. All that the law allows is you in certain situations arrest a person, arrest as it is called, and then of course hand over to the police immediately. अपने घर में जेल नहीं बना सकते आप. But that's what you can do. All that you can do. The moment you make it punitive, it's an offense. If it's an offense against human body, he has an equal right to. अब इसमें तो देखो पब्लिक सर्वेंट्स वाले में से भी निकाला उन्होंने with this power apprehension of death of grievous hurt. So that's about theft. Either the person has managed to effect his retreat, he's run away. His second situation, you've obtained the assistance of public authorities, and third is property has been recovered. आपकी property वापस आ गई, अब उसको सजा देना for stealing, because even temporary deprivation is enough for the offense of theft. You don't require that you should be completely dispossessed of your property for theft, for it to be called theft. So the property has been recovered. But even temporary deprivation is enough for the offense of theft. So for that period, he was guilty of theft, and for that the state will punish him. You can't. You cannot punish him. Now, there will be another dimension to it, which came up in some earlier cases, and there was some confusion, and then finally they clarified, settled. So बहुत पुराने cases हैं. And the issue is, when you say if the thief has managed to effect his retreat, the right ends. Will it revive? If I see him later, for example, somebody steals your watch and runs away with it. A day later, you're standing up, you inform the public authorities. Or at least you had the time to take recourse to the protection of public authorities. Remember, all of this, everything is subject to 99. The availability of the right itself is subject to 99, 97 when they go. Where it says, if you have time to take recourse to protection of public authorities, that's what you should do. And if the damage has been done, then of course that's what you do, report the crime. So somebody steals your watch today, he's run away with it. You report or you don't report, whatever, it doesn't matter. In my example, it doesn't matter. Tomorrow you see the thief standing in some queue, wearing your watch. बड़ी अच्छी लग रही है उसमें. Can you now snatch your watch back, because right of private defense of theft, the section says continues till the property is recovered. No, you cannot. Of course, again, what I said earlier, जो power of arrest है किसी को पकड़वाने की वो तो है, लेकिन confusion create करने के बाद finally what the court said, and these are like I said old cases, 19th century के भी हैं इसमें, कोई फिर इलाहाबाद से, राजस्थान हाई कोर्ट से 1959, 68 ये सब भी हैं, लेकिन फाइनल कंक्लूजन ये है that recapture of property while it is in the course of being carried away is authorized. वो तो ये कहते हैं till you recover the property or is effected as retreat. So you can chase him and recover, जैसे मैंने आपको एग्जाम्पल में कहा. But when the offense has been committed, वो हो गया, वो लेके भाग गया. A recapture after an interval of time by the owner or other persons on his behalf. आपने नहीं, आपके किसी फैमिली मेंबर ने देखा कि ये तो उसकी घड़ी है और पहन के घूम रहा है, तो he must be there. You describe the thief to the family. So recapture after an interval of, because remember this is private defense, not self-defense. So recapture after an interval of time by the owner or by other persons on his behalf, however justifiable, cannot be deemed an exercise of right of private defense. ठीक है, अब वापस दोबारा गैप की बात नहीं कर सकते. Next is right of private defense of robbery. Now, if you've understood robbery, I had explained it briefly. When does theft amount to robbery and when does extortion amount to robbery? I had explained, asked you to read the sections. We can't keep repeating, unfortunately. बार-बार हम नहीं जा सकते. But if you understood the nature of robbery, when does extortion amount to robbery? Immediate presence of the offender, fear of instant death, hurt, wrongful restraint, and instant delivery of property. That's when it becomes robbery. जो वहीं पे सब कुछ हो रहा है, या थेफ्ट में जैसे यूज ऑफ फोर्स है, किसी को पिन डाउन करके आप उसकी जेब से पर्स निकालते हैं, वो थेफ्ट तो है ही. You're taking movable property without consent, etc., with dishonest intention. But the fact is, you've used force to do it. You've pinned him down, you tied him up, or you've caused a fear. You sort of put a knife to his throat, and then you snatch his property, whatever his जो भी आपने चेन छीनी है, I'm saying, डर के खुद देगा तो extortion amounting to robbery. And if you snatch it, that's theft amounting to robbery because you've taken it beyond theft. So because of these, because in robbery there is either theft or extortion. So it's an aggravated form of either theft or extortion. इसलिए आप सुनते हैं ना बैंक रॉबरी, तो इसी तरह गनमैन लेके गए, घेर लिया, सबको कोने में लगाया, फिर अपने आप कलेक्ट करके प्रॉपर्टी ले गए, तो थेफ्ट अमाउंटिंग टू रॉबरी है. और अगर कैशियर ने पैक को बोला डाल के रखो और वो फिर छीन लिया, अपने आप उससे ले गए, उससे छीन के ले गए, तब तो वो थेफ्ट हो जाएगा. और अगर उसने इकट्ठा करके कैशियर को बोला और उसने इकट्ठा करके डिलीवर किया डर के कि भाई नहीं तो सबको मार देंगे, that's extortion amounting to robbery. Delivery of property is part of extortion, इसलिए कह रहे हैं. So if you understand this urgency, this immediacy for robbery, then you realize why it says the right of private defense of property against robbery continues as long as the offender causes or attempts to cause to any person death, hurt or wrongful restraint. I told you what wrongful restraint is last time. इसलिए जैसे बैंक रॉबरी में सब एक तरफ हो जाओ कोने में बंद के, नॉट जस्ट बैंक रॉबरी, घर में भी डिकॉइटी हो सकती है, वो सब भी. और as long as the fear of instant death, hurt or wrongful restraint continues. Instant मैंने आपको बताया जो extortion का example, extortion amounting to robbery, right? So that's as long as that fear continues or there is an attempt to cause that death, hurt or wrongful restraint. Criminal trespass, I've told you, it's the same for mischief as long as the mischief continues. Against housebreaking by night, which is just a form of criminal trespass, as long as house trespass which has begun by such housebreaking continues. ठीक है, housebreaking by night है, the right of, ध्यान से पढ़ो इसको, right of private defense of property against housebreaking by night. अब housebreaking by night आता है, where the right is available to the fullest extent. You can, if required, subject to 99 and repeating again and again and again. If required, subject to 99, only then. Meaning more harm than is necessary for the purpose of defense should not be caused, amongst other things. It's the right is available to the fullest extent, and sorry, and the अरे पीते पीते ही भूल गई मैं क्या कह रही थी. The right is available to the fullest extent, and the right is a form of criminal trespass. The right will continue as long as the house trespass which has begun by such housebreaking continues. मतलब जरूरी नहीं है कि वो it will not end. Housebreaking by night means after sunset before sunrise. But let's say वो जाने के मूड में नहीं है ना, वो दिन में भी आपके घर में है. After sunset before sunrise, sunrise has happened, it's afternoon, but the thieves are still in your house. So you're right. ये जनरल क्रिमिनल ट्रेसपास में भी आ जाएगा. क्या हो गया? While speaking only आप इसको ये इसमें क्रिमिनल ट्रेसपास में भी जनरली आ जाएगा ना, as long as the criminal trespass, because it's just a form, but they're clarified, as long as the house trespass which began by such housebreaking. So even if they are there till afternoon, your right is continuing, although it is housebreaking by night में it's after sunset before sunrise. ठीक है, वो broadly trespass में भी हो जाएगा. That's 106 we've done. Collateral damage, you can take the risk, but only when there's harm of death. Body में आता है, and this is of course an illustration also. Okay, that completes the sections, and then we have many cases. कब हो गई ये syllabus पता नहीं. Anyone has a clue what other sections are doing, where they've reached? मैं तो पूछताछ ज्यादा करती नहीं हूँ. Any clue? हम कितना पीछे, थोड़ा तो पीछे होंगे हम, वो हमारी समस्या रहेगी. Because I take a lot of time on the sections. ये देखो आगे ये सब है, तो वहां पे थोड़ा जल्दी करेंगे. मैंने जो आपको कहा था, वहां 6 लेक्चर्स हमारे पास लग्जरी हो ही नहीं सकती है, भी नहीं है. हम अलग सीबीसीएस के लिए किया हुआ है. ऑफेंस ऑफ थेफ्ट, एक्सटॉर्शन, रॉबरी, डिकॉयटी, उसमें बहुत जल्दी कराऊंगी मैं अब आपको, बिकॉज ब्रॉडली आई हैव एक्सप्लेन्ड. किडनैपिंग, अबडक्शन पूरा है. I've already explained to you पूरा, मैंने उस दिन आपको स्टोर करके समझाया था. So that's why we may be a little behind अभी, लेकिन because I've done things जो आगे आएंगी वहां पे जल्दी करेंगे. अब इसमें ये 1 2 3 4 केसेस repetitive है law, and I've already covered the law with the section, so please read the cases if you haven't already. ठीक है, स्टार्ट करते हैं फर्स्ट से. फिर से मेरी नाट देख लो तुम्हें. There's a father. The father's name is Gangaram. ये 4 नहीं है, 3 साल का. Father, 3 sons. ये नाम स्वरूप है आपके. The respondent here, and then 2 others. सोमी, सुभाष. ऐसे ही अगर आपको 5 लग रहा है, Somi and Subhash. It's not important, but so that you get the idea of the relationship. So there's a father. But anyone who's read this case and would like to tell the facts? Class में तो हम ऐसे ही करते हैं, यहाँ पे सब unilateral लिखता जा रहा है. तो you would have presented cases, which takes care of many things. We can get time to correct ourselves, learn. So there are 3. What happens is this. Is a 1974 Supreme Court judgment, as you can see. 1970 में ये हुआ. Facts. So there was this family, Gangaram's family. Ramswar was his son. There were 2 other brothers, Somi and Subhash, who were the accused initially. And the case is that on that particular day in 1970, and it's summers, and this is from UP, so June में हुआ है ये, तो early morning. Before that, we come to the background of this case. This fellow Gangaram, the father, From 1954 to 1969, this man had held contract of Tehbazari in that vegetable market where this incident happened. Now 1970 to 71, so 15 साल के करीब उसके पास वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऑफ तहबाजारी था उस सब्जी मंडी का. And that particular year, 70 to 71, the deceased, a man called Munimji, outbid him. So you can imagine हो सकता है वो थोड़ा सा कोई lurking enmity कुछ है. So with that background, on that particular day, about 7 a.m. in the morning, a.m. in the morning is superfluous here. At 7 a.m. that this fellow Gangaram went to the market, that's the allegation, to purchase a basket of melons. And this fellow Munimji declined to sell it to him, saying that it is already marked for another customer. टोकरी है लेकिन ये भी किसी और के लिए. Hot words followed. Ego of a man who held the contract of Tehbazari. कल तक तो मैं राजा था इस मार्केट का. For almost 15 years. And he's told that this one basket of melons that you want to buy is marked for somebody else. आपको नहीं मिलेगी. अब इसमें देखो जो हमने रीजनेबल मैन पे कॉन्सेप्ट किया नानावती में, मैं आपको एग्जांपल दे रही थी. One person can just laugh at it and say नया शौक है ना, बहुत किया हमने ये, and go back. Find some other sabzi mandi or not eat melons for some time or whatever, buy it some other way. बहुत सारी जिंदगियां बच जाती हैं इस तरह सोचने में. नहीं तो फिर एक टोकरी मेलन की कीमत फिर रामस्वरूप बाबू को पता चली, फिर एक चुटकी सिंदूर तो पता नहीं, because he was the only one who paid for this and did that practically the whole family did. I mean, the four of them. ठीक है ना, तुम लोग ही बनाते हो मुझे फिल्मी. मैं एक्चुअली कभी अब तो मैं बहुत ही कम मूवीज देखती हूँ. दिस इज it's pretty sad. जो मैं आपको on a serious note also I'm saying this because you will see here in group liability, deliberately I'm saying this, that you're young, probably at times rash, and then you realize that these are lives wasted because these are also not cold-blooded killers. उनमें से कुछ होंगे भी, but you see that in so many cases in group liability that when it's पेपर में हम कहेंगे एक्टिव पैसिव बाद में, क्योंकि ग्रुप लायबिलिटी भी करना है ना, इसलिए मैं उस पर थोड़ा टाइम स्पेंड करती रहती हूँ, so that you take all of these cases also as examples of group liability. That's why I've given to you to them. इसलिए मेरा थोड़ा बात वाले स्पीड अप होंगे, फिर आप देखना. तो in group liability we will say active passive whatever role somebody plays, if you can prove common intention or common object, liability is the same, etc. But practically it's very difficult because if I'm just standing there silently, just because I'm the father or the brother, I can't automatically be punished. I may just be a bystander. Maybe I just wanted him to stop. तो वो आपको prove करना पड़ता है over attack से practically थोड़ा बहुत कि मैंने क्या कहा क्या किया, वो मिलता नहीं है. So criminal law है, you have to prove act is serious when serious for everyone beyond reasonable doubt. So you will also have to prove common intention between them for beyond reasonable doubt. And intention is what intention does, we've been saying. So unless I do something in furtherance of common intention, it's all right to say active, passive, overt act is not required. Whatever role you play, वो सब हम आगे कहेंगे. But the fact is, unless I do it, how do you gather my common intention? So practically, now this is how it works. That's why I'm taking these as also examples of. Although our purpose here is, as you can see from the title on the page, our purpose here is to discuss them from the private defense aspect. But ऐसे टुकड़े करके केस नहीं करते ना. तो टुकड़े गैंग आप तो हो नहीं, उसको तो सारे JNU में है. And I'm saying this completely sarcastically. To label a university, this kind of cliches for a university where people like us study and teach is something we should now get over with. So उसके टुकड़े करके ना तो आप केस डील करोगे नहीं, केस तो आपको एक तरह से करना है. So you need to look at it comprehensively. So it's also a case of group liability. So that's why I said what I said. So that if you shirk it off, you save lives. क्या अच्छा नया जोश है ना, नया नहीं again this is a very it's a very poignant reference, but I I don't know. I'm just presuming, and that's an assumption. ये यहीं पे generation gap की बात हो जाती है. There's a movie called Garam Hawa, if you've seen or heard. Well, Rajasthani, it's about partition, very nice. It's available on YouTube also. It depends again on the tastes that you have. So नई नई आजादी आई है ना, तो daunting to on the ground of religion. So they रहने दो, नई नई आजादी आई है, नहीं देखी ना, वो that I expected. वो थोड़ा वो classic है, classics में आती है, जैसे 2 बीघा जमीन, गरम हवा. It's a classic actually. So नई नई आजादी आई है, बलराजधानी says रहने दो, is daunted on the basis of religion and says सबका अपना अपना मतलब निकालते हैं, ऐसा कुछ she says. So you can chalk it off like that also. Or what happens here, that the son has to pay with पहले तो capital punishment मिला था. So that's where control of egos can, because आपने काफी cases में देखते हो, on the spur of the moment people commit crimes, and these are then not just lives but families ruined because that momentary loss of self-control, even if it's not amounting to grave and sudden provocation and sudden fight. So that's what happened here. So यहाँ तो थोड़ा क्या pre-planned है कि पूरी family और उस family में किसी को ये अकल ना आना कि भैया ये हम एक टोकरी melons पे हम what are we doing. So 7 a.m. this happened, and there was exchange of hot words, and during which the deceased, asserting his authority, said he was the ठेकेदार of the market. मुनीम जी जो थे उन्होंने कहा मैं ठेकेदार हूँ, 15 साल तुम्हारा खत्म, अब now this year I am the ठेकेदार of the market, and my word will be final. अब तेरी चली जब तक चली, अब तो मेरी चलेगी. Offended by this show of authority, Gangaram left in a huff. Like I said, you can laugh it off, but if you don't, this is what happens. An hour later, this man comes back with his 3 sons. अब इसीलिए तो पुत्र रत्न पैदा किए जाते हैं, है ना? इसीलिए बेटी होना दुखी बात है कि अब 3 काम आएंगे, चलो मर्डर करने. So he just took them all, and one had a gun. Ram Swarup had a gun. Gangaram had a knife, and 2 others carried lathis. तो पता नहीं वो चलानी राम स्वरूप को आती थी या राम स्वरूप में ज्यादा जोश था, या वो ज्यादा अच्छा बेटा था, उससे फादर की बेइज्जती नहीं बर्दाश्त हुई. Whatever it is, the fact is, whatever this character trait he had, he paid for it. Generally, I don't emphasize on these things, but the way we are going and the kind of crimes we read in the papers, I think we also need to somewhere look at why people commit these crimes on the spur of the moment, and accordingly sort of road rage और ये सब जो common होता जा रहा है, easily be controlled and so many lives saved. So just a little फालतू का ज्ञान. Of course, they had come to do what they had come to do. So जब वो 8 बजे वापस आए, then they threw a challenge saying that they wanted to know whose authority prevailed in the market. हम देखते हैं कौन ठेकेदार है. So they advanced aggressively to the gaddi, the seat of the deceased, Munimji, who was taken by surprise. That's the prosecution's case. He attempted to rush in a neighboring coterie, a small room, but that was too much. It was much too late. For before he could retreat, Ram Swarup shot him at point blank range, and the man died. That's the prosecution's version. थोड़ा pre-planning आ जाती है ना, 7 a.m., 8 a.m. Now that is very important because the trial court, there is a difference of view between the courts here. The trial court based on evidence, except because see who are the witnesses here. Our system is dependent a lot on, in fact mostly dependent on witnesses. और scientific evidence हम इतना बुरा handle करते हैं कि वो भी एक समस्या है. जैसे forensics वगैरह आप पढ़ोगे तो उसमें भी काफी गड़बड़ है. Availability of resources, sealing of samples, वो सब. But जैसे आरुषि के केस में आप एग्जाम्पल देखो, इस तरह की इन्वेस्टिगेशन होती है और वो कोई पिछली सदी का भी केस नहीं है. It was this century only. जिसकी मर्जी आए घूमो. Otherwise, that crime scene was मतलब far away from a perfect crime scene. वहाँ पे बॉटल भी है जिसपे ब्लड स्टेन्स है, वहाँ पाम प्रिंट भी है छत पे. There's a blood-soaked mattress lying on the terrace. There's a cooler stand that was put on Yevraj's dead body. तो उसके हैंडल्स पे किसी के निशान हो गए. इतने एविडेंस के बावजूद, और एक लड़की की तो डेड बॉडी, आरुषि वाज फाउंड इन हर रूम, और वो ब्रूटल जैसी किलिंग थी, तो वहां पे दुनिया भर की एविडेंस आपको मिलेगा. But you look at the way this case has been washed up, and at least one side the family has been ruined, I think discussed earlier also. तलवार से ज्यादा मैं आपको documentary, I think I told you behind closed doors, makes you think कि एक तरफ जिनके साथ भी हुआ गलत, उनका सोचो आप, किसी के साथ तो गलत हो, या तो पेरेंट्स ने नहीं मारा या तो सर्वेंट्स ने नहीं मारा, तो उन्होंने क्या ना किया. So it's so 8 a.m. is clear, no doubt there. Here trial court accepted the 7 a.m. incident, so they said no private defense. 7 a.m. incident happened, 8 o'clock they came back, and this is how they fired, and no question of private defense. High court disbelieved the 8 a.m. incident. उनके हिसाब से 7 बजे ऐसा कुछ नहीं हुआ, और हुआ था तो it's too trifling, वो छोटी मोटी बात है, उस पे शूटिंग नहीं होगी. This was the High Court's view. Their view was 8 o'clock they came there, and some altercation, scuffle between deceased Munimji and Gangaram. The father, Gangaram, was assaulted with lathis by servants of the deceased, some of them named, and therefore the High Court felt that because the father was being given repeated lathi blows by Shivdatta Mal, one of the prosecution witnesses, and the servants of the deceased, Ram Swarup exercised right to private defense of his father. You can use private defense, इसलिए मैंने आपको शुरू में warn किया, self defense नहीं, private defense बोलेंगे. So he can use right of private defense to defend his father. He did that, and according to the High Court, that's why it's a case of private defense. And right was available to the fullest extent. One bullet was fired, and that's why the High Court acquitted the. अब इनका क्या कहानी थी ना, ट्रायल कोर्ट ने जब कहा कि 7 a.m. इंसिडेंट हुआ, no question of private defense, ट्रायल कोर्ट convicted Ram Swarup under 302 for murder and gave capital punishment. The father Gangaram, the trial court said, is guilty. अब वो 302 क्योंकि उन्होंने गोली नहीं चलाई, मैंने आपको पहले समझाया ये. You can't use 302 straight away for him, because what is that 300 say? Because 302 means 300 in terms of definition. Who caused death by doing an act? Of course, the father. Nobody is alleging the father fired. So आप सिर्फ 300 करके तो उनको नहीं कन्विक्ट कर सकते 302 में. So you will have to read 302 with 34. He shared common intention, and the act was done in furtherance of common intention. So the father was convicted by the trial court under 302, read with 34, and given life sentence. So वहां से सिर्फ बेचारे रामस्वरूप को कैपिटल पनिशमेंट मिला. सोमी और सुभाष अब पता नहीं वो छोटे थे, शांत थे, कुछ किया नहीं, उनको ऐसी भीड़ बढ़ाने के लिए लाए थे. They were carrying lathis. No role is assigned to them, and they were acquitted by the trial court. और हाई कोर्ट ने भी इनको भी acquit किया और उनकी acquittal की अपील भी खारिज की. So all of them were acquitted by the High Court, because the High Court said 7 a.m. incident never happened. Now in the Supreme Court believed the 7 a.m. incident. अब इसमें ना कई पैराग्राफ्स लॉ के आएंगे, वो हम कर चुके हैं, आपको मैं सिर्फ मार्क करके बता दूंगी, बाद में आप अच्छे से अपने आप पढ़ोगे. अभी ऑलरेडी नहीं पढ़ा है तो. बिकॉज रेशियो लिखना ज्यादा जरूरी है, थोड़ा सा उसमें आप कुछ नहीं ऐसा नया जो हमसे सब कुछ किया है. I'm selectively marking, बाकी तो prosecution will have to first establish its case and establish it beyond reasonable doubt. So unless the prosecution proves that these are the people who killed this deceased, you don't need to go to a defense. So first the prosecution will prove that these people have killed, and then the person who's killed would plead. मैंने आपको 105 Evidence Act बताया था. I did it in private defense, or I did it for that matter in a sudden fight or grievance and जो भी exception, तब वो defense proof करेगा. Although Section 105 of the Evidence Act says that the burden lies on the person who wants the benefit of an exception to prove it to the court, but if it appears from the overall circumstances, the courts do give the benefit. And this is not just for private defense, it's for other defenses like unsoundness of mind, etc. also. So, for example, the lawyer doesn't plead the unsoundness of mind, but from the broader circumstances of the case, through cross-examination, whatever evidence comes forward, it appears that the court may give benefit. That's how they've interpreted other exceptions also. So here we have 5 witnesses, and the High Court was suspicious of their evidence, and that's why they didn't believe that the 7 a.m. incident happened, because these were first cousins and co-sharers of the and constituents of the deceased. इसलिए उनका मानना था कि इनकी reliable नहीं है testimony. The Supreme Court says one needs to be cautious, but to throw away this testimony. So and they said that you did not. They also said the High Court also felt that this melon incident did not happen because there was no entry in the account books of the deceased evidencing the sale of the melon basket, and the owner of the melons was not called to support the prosecution case. High Court भावना ही नहीं समझा, ये बास्केट के बारे में है ही नहीं कि उसको बेचने की नहीं बेचनी. It's about somebody's bruised ego. 15 years I was the master of this market. I held this contract of Tepazari, and now this fellow is denying me one, and that fellow is also getting power kick. अच्छा ये बड़ा चौधरी बनता था. अब जो ये उसमें वो एक्सक्लूडेड है जो चौधरी पैदा हुए, बनता है चौधरी वाली बातें, ठीक है. तो उनके पास कोई चॉइस नहीं है, वो पैदा ही चौधरी रहेंगे. उसके बाद so that's the bruised ego. एक बास्केट, और वो he's getting a power kick. एक बड़ा 15 साल चौधरी बनता था, आपको आप बताएंगे. And there can be incidents, maybe this man might be. So that's the sentiment. It's not about whether that basket was actually sold, not sold, किसको बेची, उसको लाओ, वो बताएगी हाँ मैंने खरीदी थी. वो होता तो भी ठीक था, नहीं होता तो भी that evidence doesn't change anything. I hope you get this point, and that's what the Supreme Court says. That's not the issue. The point of the matter is whether there was trade rivalry between the deceased and Gagara, and their relations were under a deep strain, and therefore he declined. जो मैंने आपको बताया, वो हमें जितना पता चलता है ये 15 साल है, बट अब इतना लंबे उसमें कुछ ना कुछ we can all imagine maybe something had happened. So the excuse may be false or excuse may be true. In fact, greater the possibility of falsity, तब तो उससे क्लियर हो जाता है ना कि उसने सिर्फ उसको just to slide, just to insult him, just to put him down, he said that this is already sold. ये अच्छा खरीद के दिखा. So then the High Court said that they would not have walked into a lion's den in broad daylight and be caught and beaten up, even to death. High Court का कहना था वो ऐसा नहीं करेंगे. नो, कोई शेर की मान में ऐसी बात नहीं, ऐसा ही कहते हैं ना इसको हिंदी में. Nobody would walk into a lion's den like this and be caught up and beaten up. Because at that time, I told you, June, UP, summer month होगा, तभी भी चलो टेम्परेचर सब ग्लोबल वार्मिंग के एरिया में हम रहते हैं, but that's a summer month, peak summer, early morning. So they said there would be a lot of people in the sabzi mandi, so why would somebody do it? कि वहाँ पे इतने लोग होंगे, कोई उसमें बीच में intervene भी करेगा. Supreme Court says that they did not perceive it as a lion's den. And they were prepared. 7 बजे तो वापस चला गया ना, वापस तो they got armed and came back. Gun है, knife है, 2 लाठीज हैं. And you talk about a big congregation, कि भीड़ में कोई क्यों जाएगा, भीड़ में लोग intervene करेंगे. The court says that the crowds are often indifferent. So that tells us what was true in 1970s too, even now. And sometimes, all the times we hear about interveners being killed, इसलिए लोग डरते भी interfere नहीं करते. बहुत बार ऐसा होता है, कोई molestation का, कोई, I don't like calling it eve teasing. That's an obnoxious term that needs to go. So any kind of sexual harassment and people who intervene, or in fights people who intervene, or road rage who intervene, many times they are also harmed. Keenan Rubin some years back, Bombay, I'm reminded of that. So people generally don't intervene, is what the Supreme Court said. Then they said, the High Court also said, if, let's say, they were sort of agitated by some high and mighty attitude of a trade rival, and they were in a state of turmoil, they would not go carrying one cartridge in a gun, in a double barrel gun. At least they would have loaded both the barrels with cartridges. The Supreme Court's opinion on this is, कभी आप स्पेयर चाकू लेके नहीं जाते मारने. So one cartridge or two, these are agitated minds. So probably they did not think that much. So if the High Court is saying that this 7 a.m. incident never happened, and that's why 8 a.m. they came and the father was assaulted and the sons were exercising right of private defense of the body of the father, then why were they carrying gun and knife and lathis? Especially a gun. मतलब मेलन खरीदने कौन गन लेके जाता है, आप में से कोई जाता हो तो पता नहीं, तो इतने एडवेंचरस है नहीं. So उसमें हाई कोर्ट का जस्टिफिकेशन था that they have some, वो तो एविडेंस में आया होगा, हाई कोर्ट सपना तो नहीं देखेगा, that they had some farm which is at a distance of 2 miles from where this incident happened, and maybe they had gone early morning to have a round of their vegetable farm, and on their way back they wanted to buy this basket of melons, and that's how it happened. So presumption is कि सुबह सुबह farm पे गए थे जो 2 mile दूर था, इसीलिए गन शायद लेके गए. So that's how the High Court explained it. And then 8 a.m. they went to the market, some unexpected quarrel, and that's how it happened. The court says the High Court assumed without evidence that Gangaram used to carry a gun to his vegetable farm. और उस बेसिस पे ये कि भाई गन थी पास में, वहां गए, सडनली झगड़ा हो गया, गन चल गई, कोई मर गया. चल गई मतलब प्राइवेट डिफेंस में चला दी. Supreme Court's view is it's retribution because they felt slighted by it. जो मैंने कहा पूरा दारूमदार उसी पे है. The whole thing depends on whether the 7 a.m. incident happened or did not happen, and as you can see, the trial court, High Court, Supreme Court, they are interpreting it their own way. Then again some law. So ये प्राइवेट डिफेंस की ना थियोरी की फाउंडेशन यही थी, और वही जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट कह रहा है कि वो ऐसे नहीं हुआ, they came at 7 a.m. and of course the whole thing changes. Then again some law that we've already done, right of private defense is right of defense, not retribution, available in the face of imminent peril, etc., but you can't use it as a pretext to kill. So if you go to kill another person with a gun, then of course he'll also act in self-defense. Private defense is the word I prefer. And you can't, there is no right of private defense against private defense. So all this we've done, you can just again read this paragraph 14. So the court has accepted that he was angered by the rebuff, he went there, and there's a reference to doctrine of, this is called doctrine of retreat to the wall or retreat to the ditch. ये कॉमन लॉ में थी, इंडिया में कभी नहीं लगी, यहाँ हल्का सा रेफरेंस है, but there was this initially debate, this does it also apply in India, but the court's view has been that it doesn't. What do you mean by doctrine of retreat to the ditch? That if you are attacked, this was a common law doctrine, like I said, if you are attacked, that if you can retreat to the wall or retreat to the ditch, if you can run away or you can retreat, step back easily to the wall or to the ditch, and then you save yourself, first you do that. अगर बच के अपने आप को भाग के बचा सकते हो तो पहले वो करो. अगर वो पॉसिबिलिटी नहीं है तो वो ये आपको फोर्स यूज करने का पावर है एक्सेस प्राइवेट डिफेंस में. इंडिया में वो नहीं था. सो देयर इज नो ड्यूटी टू रन, बट यू शुड हैव क्लीन हैंड्स. ये नहीं कि किसी की प्राइवेट डिफेंस में आप यू आर एक्सरसाइजिंग राइट टू प्राइवेट डिफेंस अगेंस्ट प्राइवेट डिफेंस. सो दैट्स आल्सो क्लैरिफाइड. एंड देन द कोर्ट सेज quite apart, we'll also discuss this in Devnarayan. It's a different language in different judgments. Xavier Martin, it's different language. Devnarayan, it's different. But they are saying the same thing. Quite apart from the consideration as to who was initially at fault, the extent of harm which may lawfully be inflicted in self-defense is limited. It's necessary incident of the right of private defense that the force must bear a reasonable proportion to the injury to be averted. That is, the injury inflicted on the assailant must not be greater than necessary for the purpose of protection. Right? So, undoubtedly, you can't modulate step by step, tier by tier, because you can't expect detached reflection in the presence of an uplifted knife. Golden scale theory from Devnarayan, like I've told you earlier. 99, we already know it. So here the court, although see, even from a threat or attempt, the right commences. But generally the courts do compare injuries on both sides to assess whether this was what was the actual situation. So here the father has 4 contusions on his person, and the injuries were simple in nature. So the Supreme Court says, assuming that Gangaram, the father, received these injuries before Ramswarup fired the fatal shot, there was clearly no justification that he fired at point blank range. The man was shot at the chest, and the blackening and tattooing on the wound shows that he was fired at from a close range while he was trying to escape to the coterie that he had near his gadi, while he was retreating to a small room near his seat. So they said that this was again, not required. And then the pellet marks on the charre lagte na, the pellet marks on the door frame show that the Supreme Court says that he was fleeing and that's when it was fired. Now, इसमें भी High Court का कहना था that these were probably from some other shot and that the Supreme Court says goes contrary to the High Court's finding. एक तरफ तो आप कह रहे हो डबल बैरल गन में एक बुलेट लेके वो क्यों जाते, दूसरी तरफ आप कह रहे हो जो pellet marks हैं वो किसी और बुलेट से आए होंगे. So that's inconsistent. Again some law, तो ये law snippets में इसमें आ रहा है in para 19 sections 105 Evidence Act. ये सब ऐसा कुछ नहीं है जो मैंने आपको नहीं बताया, तो अपने आप पढ़ लें. ठीक है, अगर आप
मैम आई हैव अ डाउट. मैम in paragraph 17 last line Supreme Court says considering the nature of injuries received by Gangaram, it is impossible to hold that there could be a reasonable apprehension. Ma'am, but but nature of injuries is something which is which is a consequence of the act. Ma'am, and apprehension is something which a person has before that act is committed. So how can I draw conclusion from the injuries that I could perceive that it could not be of grievous hurt?
वो इसीलिए कर रहे हैं. हाँ, वो आप ठीक कह रहे हो, मैं समझ रही हूँ बिल्कुल आपकी बात है. एब्सोल्युटली राइट इन टर्म्स ऑफ हाउ द ह्यूमन माइंड वर्क्स. अब मुझे क्या पता ना कितना मारेगा, एंड दैट्स व्हाई द राइट कमेंसेस from the stage of attempt or even reasonable threat, as the sections say. But often while deciding, because these can be also cases of free fight, etc., they often do compare. Although they say, at the same time they will say, it's not necessary. Dev Narayan mein kahenge, aage Xavier Martin mein kahenge, yeah, that it's not necessary that an injury should be caused before you exercise your right of private defense. I may not have suffered a scratch, but somebody is standing there with a gun threatening to shoot me, and it's a real reasonable imminent threat, and I just do the reverse. So मेरे को scratch भी नहीं लगा, and the right may still be available to the fullest extent. But they do compare it often to just exclude free fight and to decide who was the aggressor and who was defending. इसको देखने के लिए ना ये अक्सर करते हैं. But आपका जो point है वो in terms of working with the human mind, I totally understand what you're trying to say. Then of course they say, I'll just complete this. There may be cases where although private defense is not established by an accused on balance of probabilities, yes, totality of facts ये लगता है कि mens rea कि मतलब आप prosecution की theory में भी you can point out the weaknesses and that could also be a ground for acquittal. So obviously again the same thing. Ramswarup, they've accepted the 7 a.m. incident and they say that they came, like they said, the man was trying to flee when he fired, and they've not, from the injuries also it can't be inferred that this was done in the exercise of right of private defense. So no private defense, 7 a.m. incident accepted, but some scuffle may have happened because there are injuries on the father's person, and because of which they said instead of capital punishment he was given life sentence. ट्रायल कोर्ट ने उसको दिया था ना. Gangaram, the father, is acquitted of the charges because the witnesses who said as soon as they came, Ramswarup opened gunfire. Just after coming forward, Ramswarup opened gunfire. ये सब इस तरह का evidence है. There are witnesses who say that the father-son duo challenged with one voice the authority of Munibji, but again, this kind of evidence, the court takes आगे group liability में आप देखोगे, the court takes with a pinch of salt because they said this kind of एविडेंस कैन, द विटनेसेस कैन एग्जैजरेट कि आई और ऐसा बोला था, और उसके बेसिस पे कन्विक्शन दे आर लिटिल कॉशियस in inferring common intention from that only, or especially because these were interested witnesses, interested because they were related to the persons कोई co-sharer है, कोई कुछ है. So the father is also, so like I said earlier, Ram Swarup is the only one who's punished, बाकी सब बच गए. इसलिए ज्यादा अच्छा बेटा होना भी खतरनाक है लाइफ में. Moral of the story. And with that we end it. You must be having a class today. कल इसको बाकी 3 केसेस बचे, तीनों खत्म करेंगे. पढ़ के आना, जल्दी जल्दी करेंगे. This law is repeated in different words. I just tell you the paragraphs. आपने पढ़ा होगा तो पहले आप खुद ही ढूंढ लोगे किससे सेक्शन समझ में आता है. एक आपको भी मैं कल ही बताती हूँ, मैंने पढ़ लिया था. ठीक है, चलो, हैव अ गुड डे और पढ़ लेना केसेस. आपको लॉ पता है, सेक्शंस पता है, आप आराम से फटाफट पढ़ लो. इसलिए परशुराम मत बनिए. अच्छा, ये क्या रेफरेंस है ऋषि, समझाओ मुझे. मैं थोड़ी कच्ची हूँ माइथोलॉजी वाइथोलॉजी.
नहीं, एक्चुअली परशुराम अपने पिता के कहने पे अपनी माँ का गला काट दिया था ना.
अच्छा हाँ, बस समझ गए ना, बस समझदार को इशारा काफी. तो उनको बोलो, नहीं जी पिताजी आप पानी पियो एक गिलास ठंडा ठंडा और फिर बात करें. गर्मी में तो खासकर ज्यादा अच्छा बनने की जरूरत